Still remember the moment I walked back into his house. My hands were cold, my chest was tight, and every step felt like walking into a memory I never wanted to see again. I had been gone for years, long enough to learn how to breathe without him, long enough to pretend I was fine. But life has a strange way of turning back to the very door you once closed. And that morning, I stood at his front steps with a cleaning bag in my hand and a truth I did not want to face. I was returning to the house of the man who once promised he would never let me go. I introduced myself to the new manager of the cleaning agency the week before. I needed the job, I needed the money. I needed something steady, something simple, something that would not hurt. But the universe has its own cruel humor. When the agency assigned me to a new client, they said his name calmly, like it was nothing. Yet it hit me like a falling wall. I heard his name, and all the years I spent trying to forget collapsed inside me. I felt my throat closing, but I nodded and accepted. I had no choice. Bills do not wait for your heart to heal. When I arrived at his door, the air smelled the same as before. Faint coffee, polished wood, and something warm that once felt like home. I knocked softly, already shaking. I thought maybe he would answer. Maybe he would look at me with the same eyes he once used to hold me. But the door opened halfway, and he was not there. It was someone else. A coworker of his, a stranger, a reminder that nothing in that house belonged to me anymore. I stepped inside, and every corner whispered a memory. The living room where we used to sit late at night. The hallway where he would press a kiss to my forehead before leaving for work. The place where he once held my hands and told me I was the only thing that ever felt right in his life. Now it was silent, cold, larger than I remembered. Too large for what was left of me. The coworker gave me instructions and left quickly. I stayed alone in that house, listening to the echo of my own breathing, trying not to fall apart. I told myself I was only there to work, to survive, to clean the floors that were no longer mine. But the truth hit me harder with every step. I was cleaning the home of a man who had erased me from his world. I moved slowly, trying not to think, but memories rose everywhere. His jacket still hung behind the door. A familiar mug was left on the counter, the same couch, the same curtains, the same light coming from the kitchen window. Time had changed me, but it had not changed this place. It felt like walking into a ghost version of my past life. When I reached the bedroom door, I froze. My breath stopped completely. I told myself I would not open it, that I did not need to clean that room. But my job required it, and jobs do not care about broken hearts. My fingers touched the handle and a cold wave went through me. I had slept in that room, I had cried in that room. I had whispered promises in that room that were never kept. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me first. Familiar cologne, mixed with the cold quiet of a room someone no longer shares. The bed was perfectly made. Too perfect. Too empty. That room once held two people trying to build a future. Now it held one man who had already moved past me. As I dusted the shelves, I found something that made my heart drop. A framed picture of him, smiling, standing with someone new. Not a girlfriend, not a wife, just a coworker, I hoped. But the expression in his eyes was different, softer, warmer, like he had found a place where he could breathe again, a place that was not me. I placed the frame back slowly, but my hands were shaking. I felt my eyes burn. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it stayed. I kept cleaning, but my movements were weak, heavy, like dragging chains across the floor. I wanted to leave. I wanted to disappear. But I needed the money, and the agency had strict rules. So I forced myself to stay, even while my heart begged me to run. When I finished the bedroom, I walked to the hallway, needing air. That was when I heard the front door unlock. My blood turned to ice. I stood still, unable to move. The sound of footsteps filled the hall, slow and familiar. And then I heard his voice. Deep, calm, the same voice that once made my entire world feel safe. He had come home early. And I was not ready. I did not turn around at first. I could not. My legs felt locked in place, as if the floor itself held me still. His steps moved closer, slow and steady, the same rhythm that once told me he was home long before he spoke. My heart beat so loud I thought he would hear it echo through the walls. I breathed in, trying to calm myself, but the scent of the house wrapped around me. His scent and it made my eyes sting. He stopped behind me, close enough that I felt the air shift, but far enough that I knew he had no idea who I was yet. I was just a cleaner, just another worker passing through his days. Not the woman who once shared his mornings, his worries, his dreams. Not the woman he once held like she was something he never wanted to lose. "Hello?" he said. His voice was calm, casual, the kind of voice used with strangers. I forced myself to turn, my knees trembled. And when I finally faced him, the world seemed to fold into a small, painful point inside my chest. He looked older, but in a beautiful, quiet way. His hair was a bit shorter, his shoulders broader. But his eyes were the same. They had always been the part of him that could break me with just one look. For a moment, he did not recognize me. His expression was neutral, polite. I felt something cold slip through my ribs. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to remember me. But I also feared it more than anything. Then it happened. His brows pulled slightly together. His eyes widened only an inch, but it was enough. Recognition hit him slowly, painfully, like a memory he never expected to face again. He whispered my name. And the sound of it coming from his mouth after all those years was enough to undo everything I had tried to rebuild inside me. I didn't know they sent you here," he said. His voice had changed, lower, softer, unsure, like he was speaking to a ghost. I tried to answer, but my voice broke before the words could come out. I swallowed hard and forced myself to breathe. "It's just work," I said softly. "I didn't know this was your house. It was a lie, and we both knew it." He stepped back a little, as if giving me space would make the moment hurt less. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly. "I can call the agency. I can ask for someone else." His offer stabbed me deeper than if he had said nothing at all. He wanted peace, distance, separation, a clear line between who we were and who we would never be again. But I shook my head. "I need the hours," I answered. "I'm fine." He looked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to tell me to leave for my own sake, or maybe for his. But instead he nodded slowly. His eyes dropped to the floor, avoiding mine, as if looking at me made the memories spill out too quickly. "I'll stay out of your way," he murmured. "I'm working from home today. You can do what you need." He walked past me, and the air he carried with him brushed my arm. My skin burned with the memory of what his touch used to feel like. I watched him disappear into the hallway, and something inside me wanted to follow, call his name, ask him why we ended the way we did. But I stayed still. I had no right to his explanations anymore, just like he had no right to my tears. The house felt smaller with him in it. Every sound was louder, every breath heavier. I kept cleaning, but my hands were unsteady, and my thoughts were loud enough to drown out everything around me. He stayed in the office for most of the morning. I heard papers moving, a chair rolling, a soft sigh now and then. Each sound felt like a reminder of a life I no longer belonged to. At noon, he came to the kitchen while I was cleaning the sink. I froze again, but this time I managed to hide it better. He stood by the counter, looking for something, avoiding my eyes. And then he asked quietly, "Are you eating?" I shook my head. "I'll eat later." He paused for a long moment, then reached into a drawer and took out a small lunch container. "You can take this," he said. "I made extra." The gesture was simple. But it tore something open inside me. Because he used to cook for me. He used to make extra for me. He used to leave small lunches on the kitchen island when I worked late shifts. And now the same gesture felt like a ghost of something we could never return to. I shook my head gently. "No, thank you. I'm fine." But he set it on the counter anyway. "It's yours if you want it." His voice cracked just a little at the end. And that tiny crack told me something I was not ready to hear. He was not as untouched by our past as he wanted to seem. He walked away again before I could say anything. And this time, when he left, I felt something inside me shift. As if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. I kept working, trying to stay focused. But the truth was already growing inside me, heavy and painful. I had returned to his house as a cleaner. But I was not ready for the memories that still lived here. and I was not ready for the truth I would soon discover about the heart he no longer carried. The second day I went back to his house, I thought it would hurt less. People say the first time is always the hardest, that the shock fades, that the heart learns how to stand in the same place without falling apart again. But when I walked up those steps with my cleaning bag on my shoulder, I realized something simple and cruel. Pain does not follow rules, it just waits where you left it. The sky was gray that morning. The kind of sky that feels heavy, like it might rain but never really does. I stared at his door for a long moment before knocking. For a second, I almost turned around. I told myself I could ask the agency to change my assignment, find another house, another client, another life. But my rent would not wait, and neither would the hospital bills for someone I loved more than my own comfort. When the door opened, it was him this time. No coworker, no stranger between us. Just him and the quiet space where our names used to live side by side. He looked surprised, as if part of him had not believed I would actually come back. Maybe he thought I would run away from this place like I once ran away from our story. "Morning," he said softly. His voice did something to me. It pushed my memories to the surface like bubbles rising in water. I forced a small nod. "Good morning," I answered, trying to sound professional, distant, like any cleaner he had never shared a bed with. He stepped aside and let me in. His eyes followed me, but he did not say my name this time. Maybe he was afraid of the weight it carried. Maybe he knew that every time he spoke it, another piece of me broke free and fell somewhere I could not reach. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I moved to the kitchen first, like I did the day before. It felt safer to start in a room where the memories were mixed with other things: food, dishes, daily routines. The bedroom felt too raw, too intimate. I was not ready to face that part of the house again so soon. As I cleaned the sink, I saw his note on the fridge. It was simple, written in neat, familiar handwriting. Groceries delivered. Dinner at 7, meeting at 4. My eyes followed the letters like they were something sacred. I used to leave notes like that. Small reminders, little messages, hearts in the corner of his name. I took a breath and looked away. Stayed in the living room with his laptop open, his phone on the table, papers scattered around him. He was clearly busy, but every now and then I could feel his gaze on me, like he was checking if I was still there, if I was real, if this strange situation had not dissolved into a dream. At one point I dropped a small spoon on the floor. The sound made me jump even though it was nothing. Just metal on tile. But in that quiet house it sounded too loud. He looked up instantly, and our eyes met across the room. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said quickly, bending to pick it up. "Just clumsy." He watched me for a moment longer, as if trying to read all the things I did not say. Then he nodded and went back to his work. But that brief look stayed with me. There was something in his eyes I could not ignore. Regret, worry, maybe even guilt. Or maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. When I moved to the hallway, I passed the small mirror hanging on the wall. I caught my own reflection and almost did not recognize the woman staring back. My face looked tired, older than I felt inside. There were shadows under my eyes that had not been there when we were together. My hair was tied back in a simple way, nothing like the soft styles he used to run his fingers through. For a second, I wondered if he noticed any of that, if he saw the difference. If he knew which parts of me had changed because of him. I reached the bedroom door again, and my hand tightened around the cloth I was holding. I considered skipping it just for that day, leaving it for last or pretending I forgot. But then I remembered the contract, the rules, the way the agency checked every room in their reports. My life had no space for carelessness. So I opened the door and stepped inside. The bed was made again, the pillows aligned, the nightstand neat. It almost looked like a show bedroom, not a place where someone actually slept. But his cologne still lingered in the air, subtle, familiar, dangerous. As I dusted the nightstand, my eyes fell on something I had not seen the first time, a small box inside the drawer, left half open. I did not want to look. I knew it was his personal space, and I was just hired help now. But my hand moved before my conscience could stop it. Inside the box were old photos, folded papers, little pieces of his life. My heart pounded as I gently lifted one picture. It was us. Younger, smiling, arms wrapped around each other in front of a cheap apartment door that used to mean everything to us. I remembered that day. We had just moved in, with only 2 suitcases and a mattress on the floor. We were broke, tired, and happy. I stared at the photo for too long. I did not hear him come to the door. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the air. I jumped, the picture almost slipping from my hand. My cheeks burned with shame. I placed it back in the box immediately and closed the drawer, stepping back like I was guilty of a crime. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I was just cleaning." He moved inside the room, his eyes on me, not angry but wounded in a way that made it even worse. He walked to the nightstand, opened the drawer again, and looked at the box. He knew what I had seen. He knew there was no point pretending otherwise. "You kept that?" I asked before I could stop myself. My voice shook, but the question slipped out, heavy and small at the same time. He did not look at me. His thumb brushed over the edge of the photo we were in. "Some things are hard to throw away," he said quietly. The words hit me with a strange mix of comfort and pain. Part of me wanted to believe it meant something. That I was not just a name he had erased from his life. That there were parts of me he still carried. But another part of me knew better. People can keep memories and still walk away from the person in them. "I shouldn't have looked," I said. "It won't happen again." He finally turned his eyes to me. "It's okay," he said. "You lived that moment too." For a second, there was a softness between us, like a small bridge built from broken pieces. But then it faded, swallowed by the reality of who we were now, a man in his bedroom, and the woman he once loved standing there wearing a cleaning uniform that did not belong to his story. He stepped away, giving me space again. "If this is too hard for you," he added carefully, "you really don't have to keep working here. I don't want to make things worse." His words made my chest twist. "You're not making things worse," I replied. "Life already did that." Silence fell between us, heavy, honest. I turned back to my work, focusing on the dust, the sheets, the corners of the room, anything but his eyes. But as I moved, as I wiped surfaces that had once held our shared life, one thought would not leave me alone: if he had kept that photo. What else had he kept hidden in this house that I had not seen yet? I walked out of the bedroom with my heartbeat still uneven, trying to shake off the moment that had just passed. The house felt different now, heavier in a way I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the memory box, maybe it was his voice saying our past wasn't all broken. Or maybe it was the quiet truth that neither of us wanted to face but both of us felt. I moved to the dining room, needing to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't break open. The table was spotless, like he barely used it. But the chair at the end was pulled out, slightly crooked, the same way he used to sit when he worked late while I cooked. I reached for the cloth with a shaky breath and wiped the surface slowly, trying not to let old scenes play in my head. But they came anyway, him tapping his fingers on the wood while thinking, him leaning back with a sigh, him smiling at me from across the table like I was the only place he wanted to rest. I blinked hard and kept cleaning, but the silence in the house felt alive. It followed me, pressed against me, watched me. I tried to ignore it, but every room held a piece of us, even the ones I had never liked. When I entered the small guest room, I saw a blanket folded in a neat stack and a pair of slippers under the bed. I wondered if someone stayed here sometimes. A friend? A family member? A woman? My chest tightened at the thought. I knelt to clean under the dresser, but my mind wouldn't stop wandering. I hated myself for imagining things, but the idea curled inside me like cold smoke. I didn't want to care. I shouldn't care. But part of me, some fragile, foolish parts, still did. He walked past the doorway then, carrying a mug of coffee. He didn't see me at first, but I saw him. The way he paused for a moment near the living room window. The way he pressed his fingertips to his forehead as if something weighed on him too. For a second, he looked so tired that my heart cracked again in the same place it had cracked years before. When he finally noticed me, he offered a small smile. It was barely a smile at all, more like a memory of one. "If you finish early today, I can drive you home," he said. I shook my head quickly. No, I'm okay, the bus is fine. He hesitated, as if he wanted to insist, but he didn't. He just nodded, holding the mug with both hands like it kept him grounded. I finished the guest room and moved to the hallway again. He went to the office, but this time, he didn't close the door all the way. A thin line of light split the space, and I could hear the faint sound of pages turning. That tiny sound felt too intimate, too familiar, like the echo of nights when we read in the same room. I walked into the laundry room to get new supplies. The faint smell of detergent filled the air. I opened the cabinet to grab fresh towels, but something slipped and fell to the floor, a small envelope. I froze. It must have been pushed back behind the stack of towels. For a moment, I considered leaving it there, pretending I hadn't seen it. But the envelope had my name written on it. My name, not the short version he used to call me with, my full name. The name people only used when things were serious. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. The paper was a little wrinkled, like it had been handled too often. I swallowed hard, my breath unsteady. I knew I shouldn't open it. It wasn't my place, this was his house, his envelope, his story now. But my name was there. My name. Before I could decide what to do, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, hiding the envelope behind my cleaning cloth. My heart pounding as if I'd been caught stealing something priceless. He stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, watching me in a careful, quiet way. "Everything all right?" he asked. His voice wasn't suspicious. It was gentle. Too gentle. "Yes," I said quickly. "Just getting supplies." He stepped further into the room. The light from the small window fell across his face, softening his features in a way that made it hard to look at him. He wasn't wearing the cold, distant expression he had the day our marriage fell apart. There was something human there now, something open, something unsure. "You don't have to rush," he said. "You can take your time." "I'm not going anywhere." The words felt like they carried two meanings, one for my job, one for us. I nodded, afraid to speak, afraid he'd hear the shake in my voice, afraid he'd sense the envelope hidden behind the cloth in my hand. He lingered for a moment longer, his eyes drifting to the shelves as if searching for something to comment on just to stay in the same room as me. But he didn't speak. He just nodded again and turned to leave. His footsteps faded down the hall. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My hands were sweating. My pulse was too fast. The envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I didn't open it. Not then, not yet. But its presence burned through my palm, whispering questions I wasn't ready to answer. I slid it into the side pocket of my cleaning bag, telling myself I would return it later. But a part of me already knew I wouldn't. I needed to understand. I needed to know why he had kept something with my name on it in this house after everything we had lived, after everything we had lost. I finished the laundry room with shaky hands, my mind stuck somewhere between fear and longing. When I walked back into the hallway, he was sitting on the couch with his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he was fighting with something inside him. He didn't look up. He didn't have to, because something deep in my chest told me that he felt the same storm I felt, and neither of us knew how to stop it. I left the laundry room feeling like the walls of his house were closing in around me, pressing memories into my skin until they hurt. My bag felt heavier with the envelope inside, as if the paper carried a heartbeat of its own. I kept telling myself I shouldn't have taken it, that I should put it back, that curiosity had no place in a life I no longer shared with him. But the truth was stronger than the rules. I needed to know why he had held on to something with my name long after we had stopped saying each other's out loud. I tried to distract myself by cleaning the living room. The sun had come out slightly, sending a soft beam of light through the window that fell across the rug in front of the couch. That rug used to sit in our old apartment. We bought it together, laughing because it was too expensive but too perfect to leave behind. Seeing it here alone, in a bigger house, in a life that didn't include me, felt like a quiet punch to the ribs. He was sitting at the table behind me, still pretending to work, though I could feel his attention on me in small, hesitant glances. I kept my back turned, sweeping the edges of the rug slowly, trying to keep my hands steady. The air between us felt thick, full of things we didn't have the courage to speak. I bent down to straighten the rug, and something caught my eye under the edge of the couch. A small key, silver, plain, dusty. It must have been there for a long time. I reached for it, brushing the dust off with my thumb. I had no idea what it opened, but seeing it made something twist inside me. In our old life, he had keys for everything, cabinets, drawers, boxes where he kept tiny parts of his world. And he used to trust me with them. This one, though. This one felt like a secret, hidden, forgotten, just like us. Before I could think more about it, he stood up from the table. I quickly placed the key on the coffee table, not wanting him to assume I was snooping again. He walked slowly toward the living room, hands in his pockets, his steps quiet but heavy. When he reached the doorway, he paused, and for a moment, neither of us moved. "I didn't hear you come in here," he said softly. "I'm just finishing the dusting," I replied, forcing my voice to stay even. He nodded, but his eyes drifted to the key I had found. A small flicker passed through his expression, recognition mixed with something deeper. Something he didn't want me to see. He picked it up gently, turning it between his fingers before slipping it into his pocket. "I thought I lost this," he murmured. He didn't say what it opened, and I didn't ask. But the way he reacted told me enough. It meant something. He looked at me again, and this time his eyes stayed on mine a little too long. "You don't have to be afraid to talk to me," he said quietly. "I'm not angry at you. Not for anything." "I'm not afraid," I whispered. But we both knew that wasn't true. He took a slow breath, like he was preparing himself for something difficult. "I know this is awkward. I know it's not easy for you. It's not easy for me either." His honesty felt like warm hands pressing against a cold part of my chest. But I couldn't let myself fall into old comforts, not when the ground under us was so fragile. "I'm here to work," I said gently. "That's all." He swallowed, the movement tight. "If that's what you want." Was it what I wanted? I didn't know anymore. He stepped back as if giving me space, but the air between us still felt charged, heavy with unspoken history. I went back to cleaning, trying to focus on the windows, the shelves, the corners that needed attention. But my mind kept drifting back to the envelope in my bag, back to the key in his pocket, back to the photograph in the drawer. I moved to the tall window overlooking the backyard. "He used to dream of having a garden someday, a place full of flowers," he said. "A place where life could grow even when everything else felt cold." But the yard outside looked forgotten, the grass uneven, the plants overgrown, the soil dry. It surprised me that he had let something like that go. He used to care so much about small, warm things. As I wiped the glass, I heard him behind me again. I didn't turn, but I felt him step closer, felt the shift in the air. He stood a few feet away, silent at first, as if searching for the right words. "You're different," he finally said. "Soft, careful." "So are you," I answered without thinking. He let out a weak breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "I guess time does that." I lowered the cloth and turned slowly toward him. He was watching me with an expression that seemed to hold years inside it. Years we had survived separately, years that had changed us both. "You look tired," he said quietly. "Are you sleeping enough?" The concern in his voice, the real, gentle concern, made something powerful swell behind my ribs. I hated that it still affected me. I hated that part of me wanted to fall into that concern like it was a soft, safe place. "I sleep," I said. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. He stepped a little closer, but not enough to touch me. "If you ever need anything, even if it's just someone to talk to." I shook my head quickly. "We don't do that anymore." His jaw tightened slightly, and the light in his eyes dimmed. "Right," he whispered. "We don't." Silence stretched between us, and for a moment, I thought he might walk away. But he didn't. Instead, he reached into his pocket and took out the small key again. He held it for a moment, looking at it as if it were something fragile. "This opens something I haven't looked at in a long time," he said quietly. "Something I didn't think I'd have to face again." My heart froze. Before I could ask what he meant, he closed his hand around the key. "Maybe someday," he continued, "I'll show you what it belongs to." My breath caught. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The weight of his words filled the room, thick and trembling. Then he walked away, leaving me alone with the cold window, the half-cleaned glass, and a truth I wasn't ready to face. There were still pieces of our past scattered through this house, hidden, locked, waiting, and I was starting to fear what I would find when those pieces finally came to light. I stayed by the window long after he left the room, my hand resting on the cold glass as the world outside blurred into soft, colorless shapes. The past had a strange way of breathing inside these walls, rising from forgotten corners and old drawers, echoing through simple objects like keys and envelopes. I wiped the last streak of dust from the window, but the weight inside me didn't move. It stayed, heavy, quiet, waiting. I turned back to the living room and forced myself to stay focused. The shelves needed dusting, the floor needed sweeping, the cushions needed straightening. Ordinary tasks that should have felt simple, but every movement reminded me of the person I used to be in this house. The sunlight warmed my skin, but the memories made me cold. As I lifted one of the cushions, a faint scent drifted out: soap, clean fabric, and something that used to cling to him when he hugged me after a shower. It hit me so hard I had to sit down for a moment, gripping the cushion like it could keep the pieces of my heart from falling apart. My eyes burned, but I blinked fast until the feeling passed. I couldn't cry here, not in front of him, not in front of the memories. I stood up again and placed the cushion carefully on the couch. My hands had steadied, but my chest hadn't. He came back into the living room then, holding a folder in one hand. He paused when he saw me, and something in his expression softened. Maybe he saw the way I forced my breathing to stay even. Maybe he sensed the heaviness surrounding me. Or maybe he felt it too, but hid it better than I did. "I'm heading out for a bit," he said gently. "I'll be back before you finish." I nodded. "Okay." He stepped closer, not too close, but close enough that I could see the faint lines near his eyes. Lines that hadn't been there when we laughed at silly jokes in our old kitchen. "If you need anything, call me. My number hasn't changed." That last part slipped out of him, unplanned, like he didn't mean to reveal it. His eyes flickered, as if he realized too late what he had just said. My heart stumbled inside my chest. He still had the same number. A part of me whispered that this meant something. Another part whispered that it meant nothing. Both parts hurt. He walked to the door, grabbed his keys, then hesitated. His hand rested on the doorknob, and for a moment, he looked like he might say something else. Something important. But he didn't. He opened the door and stepped outside, leaving the house quiet once again. The moment he left, the silence rushed in deep and hollow. I let out a long breath, one I didn't know I'd been holding. The house felt bigger without him, but emptier too. I moved through the rooms faster now, needing to finish before the thoughts in my head swallowed me whole. When I came back to the living room, his laptop was still open on the table. The chair was pushed back slightly. His mug was half full of cold coffee. His jacket rested on the arm of the sofa like he had just placed it there casually. But one thing caught my attention: a notebook lying half open beside the laptop, as if he had left in a hurry. I knew I shouldn't look. I told myself to ignore it. But my eyes fell on the page anyway, on the writing, neat and angled, exactly the way he used to write lists on our fridge. I stepped closer, just enough to see the top line. My name, written clearly at the top of the page. My breath froze. My pulse echoed through every part of me. I didn't touch the notebook, didn't flip the page, didn't dare lean any closer, but the fact remained. He had been writing something about me, a note, a thought, a reminder, a confession. I didn't know, and the not knowing hurt more than anything written on the page could have. I turned away quickly, shaken. I needed air. I walked to the window again, focusing on the quiet backyard, the overgrown branches, the lonely wooden bench he never used. The world outside felt calmer, but inside me everything stirred in sharp, uneven waves. I forced myself to return to the work. The vacuum cleaner hummed against the rug, giving me something steady to focus on. The repetition helped a line forward, a line back, the same sound, the same motion. But with every step, my mind kept circling back to the notebook, the envelope in my bag, the key in his pocket. 3 things, all connected to me, all hidden, all waiting. As I finished the last stretch of the rug, the front door opened again. His footsteps were different this time, quicker, heavier, like he was rushing inside because something unsettled him outside. I turned off the vacuum just as he stepped into the living room. His eyes found me instantly. And the moment they did, I knew he had something to say. Something important. He moved closer, slowly, his breath uneven, his jaw tight like he was forcing himself to stay calm. For the first time since I started working in this house, he didn't try to hide his emotions behind polite distance. They were all there, all confused and heavier than the silence between us. "I need to talk to you," he said. His voice wasn't sharp, but it wasn't steady either. "There's something you should know." My stomach tightened. His fingers curled slightly at his sides. He looked at me with eyes that carried things he had locked away for years. I braced myself. Because whatever truth he was about to speak, I knew it would change everything. He stood in front of me with the kind of silence that makes the air feel tight, like the room is waiting to hear something it already fears. His eyes didn't leave mine, and for a moment, I felt like time folded on itself, like we were standing in every version of us that ever existed. From the ones that held hands to the ones that walked away. "I don't know where to start," he said, his voice low, rough around the edges. "But I can't keep pretending nothing's happening." My heart beat so loudly I thought he could hear it. My hands tightened around the vacuum handle, and I forced myself to let go before he noticed. I didn't trust my voice yet, so I didn't answer. I just waited, quiet, still, bracing for the truth he had carried behind locked doors and half-open drawers. He took a slow breath, like he was preparing to break something fragile. "These last 2 days, seeing you here, it's been harder than I expected." I felt my chest clench. I didn't want to hear more, but I needed to hear it. He stepped closer, not enough to invade my space, but enough that I could feel the warmth coming from him. "You walking through this house, touching things you once chose with me?" It made me realize how much I left behind, and how much I never dealt with. The honesty in his voice hit me like a wave. I swallowed hard. "You don't have to say this," I whispered. "I'm just here to work." "No," he said quickly, his voice firmer than before. "That's not all you are." I froze. His hands curled into fists at his sides, not in anger but in nervousness. "There's something you should have known a long time ago," he continued. "Something I should have told you before everything fell apart." My breath caught. "What is it?" He hesitated. His eyes softened in a way that almost scared me. "It wasn't you," he said quietly. "The reason I left. The reason I became cold. The reason everything broke." His voice dropped, trembling slightly. "It was never you." A sharp, painful heat rose behind my eyes. I had waited years to hear those words. To know that I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of our ending. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "There were things happening in my life that I didn't know how to talk about. Things I couldn't risk putting on your shoulders. I thought walking away was protecting you." My voice cracked as I whispered, "It didn't protect me." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if my words were a wound reopening. "I know, and I live with that every day." The room grew warmer, smaller. I felt my pulse in my throat. "What things?" I asked softly, afraid of the answer. He opened his eyes again, and for the first time, I saw fear in them. Real fear. Things I didn't want you to be part of. Things I thought would hurt you if you stayed close to me. "I shut you out because I thought I was doing the right thing." I didn't know what to do with that. Anger? Relief? Confusion? They all tangled inside me, sharp and overwhelming. "Then why keep the photo?" I asked. "Why keep the envelope with my name? And the key? Why hold on to any of it?" His expression changed, softened, deepened, almost broken. "Because I couldn't let go," he said simply. "Not really." My breath trembled inside my chest. He stepped closer, slow enough that I could step back if I wanted to, but I didn't. "You think I forgot you?" he said. "You think I erased you from my life? But the truth is, every part of this house that feels unfinished is unfinished because you were supposed to be here." A tear escaped before I could stop it. I turned away quickly, wiping it with the back of my hand, but he had already seen. He didn't reach for me, but his voice softened like a hand brushing against a bruise. "There was a reason for everything I hid, for every secret, for every lock, for every distance." "What reason?" I asked, barely able to breathe. He looked down at the floor, then back at me, his voice almost a whisper. I was sick. The world seemed to tilt sideways. My breath got stuck in my throat. What? I whispered. He nodded slowly. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to watch me fall apart. I didn't want you to see me weak. I didn't want to be a burden. So I pushed you away before you could see the worst parts. The room felt impossibly quiet. Only the sound of my heartbeat filled the space. Are you still sick? I asked, my voice breaking. He exhaled shakily. I got better. Eventually. After you left, after everything ended. But back then I didn't know if I would. Emotion rose inside me so fast, I had to hold the edge of the table to keep steady. You should have told me, I said. I would have stayed. That's exactly why I didn't, he whispered. I couldn't let you lose yourself trying to save me. His pain twisted inside me like a knife. You didn't give me the chance. He took a step closer. This time I stepped back, not because I wanted distance, but because the truth was too big, too heavy. You deserved the truth, he said, even if I gave it too late. My voice shook as I whispered, and the envelope? What's inside it? His eyes softened again, but there was something deeper behind the softness, something that made my skin prickle. That, he said, is something I wrote for you when I thought I wouldn't make it. My lungs stopped working. He didn't move. Neither did I. The distance between us was small now, but the truth standing between us was enormous. I felt the floor beneath me shift, as if the entire house had tilted under the weight of his confession. His eyes held mine, steady and fragile at the same time, waiting for a reaction I couldn't form yet. My throat tightened. My palms felt cold. Couldn't look away, but I couldn't step closer either. The truth he had carried alone for years now hovered between us like a bruise we were both afraid to touch. What did you write? I whispered. His gaze dropped for a moment, as if the question was a blade pressed to a part of him that still wasn't healed. Words I didn't think you'd ever read, he said quietly. Things I needed to tell you before it was too late. A hollow ache spread across my chest. The envelope in my bag suddenly felt like a heartbeat, a living thing. A piece of his soul folded into paper. Why didn't you give it to me? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. He lifted his head slowly because I survived. The way he said it made my breath shake. Survived. Past tense. A battle I had never known he was fighting. A war he waged alone because he thought pushing me away was a form of kindness. By the time I got better, he continued, I thought it would only make things worse. We were already broken. I didn't want to reopen something you had worked so hard to close. My heart felt like it was bleeding into the space between us. You think things ended because I wanted them to? I asked. You think I stopped loving you because it was easy? He closed his eyes briefly, pain crossing his expression like a shadow. I didn't know what you felt anymore. I didn't know what I deserved. The words hit me deep. You deserved honesty, I whispered. And I deserved it too. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth like a weight he was finally ready to carry. I know, and I'm sorry. For everything I kept from you. For every moment I made you doubt your worth. For leaving you to wonder if you did something wrong. The apology settled into the room with a quiet, trembling sincerity. It wasn't the kind of apology that rewrote history. It was the kind that admitted the damage was real, and that he had been the one holding the hammer. I wiped a tear from my cheek before it could fall, but he saw it anyway. Don't cry, he said gently. Then stop saying things that hurt, I whispered. He took a slow breath, his shoulders rising and falling in a motion that seemed tired, worn, human. I never wanted to hurt you, but I see now that hiding the truth hurt you more than the truth itself would have. Silence stretched between us, deep but not empty. It felt like both of us were searching for a way to speak through the pain without breaking the fragile thread holding the moment together. After a long pause, he spoke again. I didn't call you because I didn't know who I was after I got better, he admitted. I didn't know how to live with the person I became. I didn't know if I had the right to ask for anything from you ever again. A tightness twisted in my chest. You didn't need to ask for anything, I said quietly. Just the truth would have been enough. He nodded, the movement small but heavy with regret. I see that now. For a moment, neither of us moved. The room felt too full of everything he had hidden, everything I had carried, everything we didn't know how to let go of. Then he stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth from his breath. Close enough that if either of us reached out, our fingers would touch. But neither of us moved. "You found the envelope," he said softly. Not a question, a truth he already knew. My heart stuttered. Yes. He didn't look angry, he didn't look surprised. He looked relieved, terrified, exposed. "I wasn't going to take it," I whispered. It fell, and my name was there. "I didn't know what to do." "It's yours," he said immediately. "It's always been yours." A single tear slid down my cheek before I could catch it. His eyes followed its path with a softness that made it hard to breathe. "You can read it," he said, "if you want, if you're ready." The envelope burned in my memory like a flame waiting to be touched. "What's in it?" I asked again, because I needed to hear him say it out loud. He swallowed hard. "My goodbye." A sharp pain cut through me. "And my last words," he added in a whisper. "Everything I thought I would never get to tell you." The room tilted around me. My throat closed. "Why keep it?" I whispered. "Because I couldn't throw you away," he said. "Not even the version of you that lived only in my memories." I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to keep the sound of my breaking from escaping. He stepped just close enough that his presence wrapped around me without touching my skin. "You were the only good thing I had left," he said. "Even when I pushed you out, even when I told myself I had to let go, I never did." My knees weakened. He saw it. He caught his breath like he was about to reach out, but he didn't. He stopped himself. Because he didn't want to hurt me again. Because he didn't trust himself. Because he didn't know what I wanted. "Whatever you decide to do with that envelope," he said softly, "I'll accept it. If you want to read it here, I'll stay. If you want to take it home, I won't ask questions. And if you want to tear it apart, I'll understand." The offer broke something deep inside me, not because of the envelope, but because of the man standing in front of me, fragile, flawed. Human, finally letting me see the truth he had tried so hard to bury. "I don't want to tear it apart," I whispered. A faint breath escaped his lips. Hope, fear, something between both. He stood there, waiting for my next words like they were the key to everything he had kept locked inside. But before I could speak, a sound echoed from the hallway. Soft, unexpected, out of place. We both turned our heads. Someone else was in the house. The sound came again, a soft, hesitant shuffle, like someone trying not to be heard. My breath caught in my throat. His eyes widened just enough to show surprise, but not enough to show fear. He knew the sound. I didn't. He moved first, instinct taking over. He stepped slightly in front of me, not touching, not holding, but placing himself between me and the unknown like it was an old habit he couldn't break. That simple gesture sent a sharp ache through my chest. Years had passed, but some reflexes never died. The footsteps stopped in the hallway. A shadow stretched across the wall. My heart tightened, pounding loudly in my ears. I wasn't ready for anyone else to see me here. I wasn't ready to explain why I was standing in the middle of his living room with tears drying on my cheeks and my emotions spilling out in every direction. He glanced over his shoulder toward me, as if silently saying, "Stay here," and then walked toward the hallway with measured steps. Not rushed, not afraid, but controlled, careful, like he knew this moment could break whatever fragile balance we had just begun to rebuild. I stayed where I was, gripping the edge of the dining table to keep my legs steady. "Who's here?" I whispered to myself, though no answer came. He turned the corner into the hallway, and I heard his voice, low, steady, but carrying a tremor beneath the surface. "What are you doing here?" Not angry, not welcoming. Something in between. A woman's voice answered, soft, gentle, familiar enough that my stomach twisted before I even understood why. "I knocked," she said quietly. The door was unlocked. "I didn't think you'd mind." My throat closed. I knew that voice, not personally, but in the way you recognize a tone when you've heard it through closed doors or passing moments. Warm, comfortable, like she belonged here. I heard movement, soft footsteps coming closer. a quiet exchange I couldn't make out, the rustle of fabric, the hush of someone sighing. Then he stepped back into the living room, and she followed. A woman around my age. Beautiful in that unforced, natural way that comes from years of ease rather than effort. Her hair tied back loosely, her clothes simple but delicate, her eyes warm and steady. Not a stranger, not for him. She stopped beside him, just close enough that I could see they had shared something, even if I didn't know what. Not romantic in that moment, not obviously, but something real. Something familiar. Something that made my chest tighten painfully. Her eyes landed on me. I froze. She smiled politely, kindly, the way you smile at someone you've never met but feel sorry for without knowing why. "Oh," she said softly. "Hi. I didn't know you had someone over." Her gaze flicked to the vacuum, the cloth in my hand, the way I tried to compose myself. I felt small. He cleared his throat. "She's working here today." The words were simple, factual, but something underneath them trembled. The woman nodded, still smiling gently. "Right. Of course." She extended her hand kindly. "I'm a friend." The pause was small, but I noticed it. She chose her word carefully. A friend. I hesitated before shaking her hand, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Nice to meet you." Her smile softened even more when she looked between me and him. "I didn't mean to interrupt anything. I just needed to pick up the file you promised." She glanced at him knowingly. "The deadline's tonight." He nodded, though his jaw tensed slightly. "Right, it's in the office. I'll grab it." He walked away, leaving me alone with her. For a moment neither of us spoke. She looked around the room, her eyes gentle but observant, taking in the tension like she could feel the history in the air. Then she looked at me again. Longer this time. Softer. "You worked here before?" she asked. I swallowed. "No, just recently." She nodded slowly, as if pieces were lining up in her mind. "He's been different these past days," she said quietly. Not judgmental, not suggestive. Just honest. I didn't know why. I guess now I do. My breath stumbled. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't mocking. She wasn't competing. She was simply kind, which somehow made it hurt even more. "He cares a lot," she added softly, "more than he says." Before I could respond, he came back with a folder in his hand. He handed it to her, avoiding her eyes, avoiding mine, as though holding the file was a safer task than facing either of us directly. "Thanks," she said gently. She gave him a knowing, almost protective smile. "Take care, okay?" He nodded. Then her eyes met mine once more, and she offered a small, understanding smile, one that almost felt like an apology, though she had done nothing wrong. "It was nice meeting you," she said sincerely. "You too," I whispered. Tao left quietly. The door closed. The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had happened before. He didn't move. Neither did I. The distance between us felt enormous, filled with fears, confessions, the ghosts of our past, and now, the presence of someone new in his life. Or someone who could be. My eyes dropped to the floor. His breath trembled. He took one step toward me, then stopped. "I can explain," he said softly. But I didn't know if I was ready to hear the explanation. Because suddenly, painfully, I realized something I had been avoiding. I wasn't the only person living in the shadows of this house. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one he had once kept something hidden for. He waited for me to say something, anything, but my thoughts were tangled, heavy, swirling in every direction at once. The house felt smaller with the echo of that woman's presence still lingering in the doorway. Soft and unsettling like perfume that clings to the air even after the person is gone. I could still hear the gentle way she spoke, still see the familiarity in her eyes when she looked at him. And even though she had introduced herself as a friend, that word carried a weight I wasn't ready to unpack. He stepped toward me again. "It's not what you think," he said quietly. I lifted my eyes to his. "Then what is it?" He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck, an old habit of his when he was nervous or unsure. His gaze dropped to the floor before finding mine again. "She's been helping me," he said. "With work. with things I couldn't handle alone. The pause was long enough to sting. I swallowed hard. Helping you with what? His shoulders tensed, his voice lowering a little. After I got sick, after everything fell apart, I didn't know how to put my life back together. She was someone who stepped in when everything felt heavy. The words hit me like cold water. Not because he said them with affection, he didn't, but because they were honest. And honesty can hurt even more than lies. Are you too? The question trembled out of me before I could stop it. No, he said instantly, fiercely, like the word burned his tongue. No, it's nothing like that. My chest loosened a little. Just a little, but, he added, softer now, she's been important to me. In a different way. The crack reopened. I nodded slowly, even though the motion felt like a blade pressing against me. I understand. He stepped closer, the space shrinking between us until the air felt thin. You don't, he said quietly. You don't understand anything if you think she ever replaced you. The words hit deeper than I expected. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. You've always been the part of my life I never learned how to close properly. Even when we weren't together, even when I tried to start over in my head, you were still here. He tapped his chest lightly. And nothing, not her, not anyone, took your place. A tear escaped before I could stop it. I wiped it away quickly, but he saw it anyway. I don't want to hurt you, he whispered. Then stop pulling me into things you buried years ago, I whispered back. He closed his eyes for a second, as if my words scraped against a part of him still raw. When he opened them again, they were softer, steadier. I didn't want you to find out this way, he said. About the envelope. The key. Anything. I took a slow breath. What does the key open? His jaw tightened, not with anger, but with the weight of a choice he hadn't made yet. A drawer in my old desk, he said finally. The one in the office. What's inside? He hesitated, his eyes searching mine. Pieces of the life I couldn't let go of. Pieces of us. The room tilted again. My fingers curled around the edge of the table. I didn't open it, I said quietly. The desk. I didn't know. I wouldn't have blamed you if you did, he replied. Those things. They were meant for you someday. Even if I didn't know when. My breath trembled. Why now? Why tell me all of this now? Because you're here, he said simply. Because the moment you walked into this house again, all the lies I told myself stopped working. Emotion rose in my chest, painful, warm, confusing. I didn't know whether to step closer or step back. He took one more step toward me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence, close enough that if he whispered my name, I knew it would break me. But he didn't whisper my name. He whispered something else. Do you want to read it? My breath caught. He meant the envelope. The goodbye letter. The last words he wrote when he thought he wouldn't survive. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. His eyes held mine with a softness that made my heart tremble. You don't have to, he said. But if you want answers, if you want to understand why everything happened the way it did, it's all in there. I reached slowly for my cleaning bag, my fingers brushing the fabric like it was fragile. I felt the shape of the envelope inside, small, thin, almost weightless, yet somehow heavier than everything I had carried for years. Before I could pull it out, he spoke again. If you read it. His voice cracked softly. Just know I meant every word. Even the hardest ones. I swallowed, my throat tight and burning. Do you want me to stay while you read it? He asked. I froze. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Part of me needed to read it alone, to breathe through the words in silence, to let the truth settle without his eyes searching mine. But another part, a fragile, longing part, wanted him close, wanted to hear the breath he took when I reached a painful sentence, wanted to feel the presence of the man who wrote those last words for me. I took a step back from him, clutching the strap of my bag. My voice shook. I need a minute. He nodded slowly, as if the movement held the weight of years. Take all the time you need. I walked toward the hallway, my heart pounding in my ears. But before I reached the corner, he spoke once more, soft, trembling, honest. I never stopped caring, he said, not for a single day. My steps faltered. I didn't turn. I couldn't. But I heard every word. and they followed me into the hallway like shadows of a past I hadn't decided whether to return to or finally let go of. I stepped into the quiet of my small apartment, with the envelope still trembling between my fingers. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt too final, too heavy for such a simple sound. I stood there for a long time, unable to move, unable to breathe, as if the paper in my hand held all the years I'd spent trying to forget him, and all the years he had spent pretending he had forgotten me. I sat on the edge of my bed, the room dim, the air still. The envelope looked fragile in the soft light, but I knew the words inside it weren't fragile at all. They were sharp. They were old wounds. They were pieces of a truth I was finally ready to face. My fingers slid under the flap, and the paper opened with a quiet tear. I unfolded the letter slowly, the way you open something sacred, something dangerous. Something you were never meant to see and yet always meant to carry. His handwriting was the same, sharp at the edges, soft in the spaces between. Like him, I took a breath and began to read. He wrote about the nights he couldn't sleep, the fear that lived inside him while he waited for test results he never told me about, the pain he hid behind quiet smiles, the guilt he felt for pushing me away, the certainty that he was dying, the belief that letting me go would save me. I loved you, he wrote, in every version of the life we never finished. I felt my chest collapse inward. The pain was gentle in the beginning, then unbearable. My tears fell onto the paper, soft and quiet, like rain that tries not to be noticed. He wrote that he kept the key because it opened the drawer where he hid the parts of our life he couldn't destroy. He wrote that he kept the photo because it held the version of us that felt most real. He wrote that he kept the letter because saying goodbye on paper was easier than saying goodbye to my face. But the last line broke me completely. If someday you read this, then it means I survived long enough for life to surprise us both. But even if our paths never meet again, I want you to know one truth. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much to let you watch me fall. I pressed the page to my chest and cried until my body shook. Not because he was gone. Not because he was with someone else. Not because our story had ended. But because for the first time in years, every unanswered question, every sleepless night, every silent wound, every piece of pain I thought was mine alone, finally had a place to rest. I folded the letter again, carefully, like something alive. I put it back in the envelope and held it to my heart. The room was quiet, still, but something inside me had shifted. I wasn't healed. I wasn't whole. I wasn't ready to forgive everything. But I wasn't lost anymore. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a chain. It felt like a door. And I knew, even without seeing him again that night, even without hearing another confession, even without knowing what would happen next, I knew we weren't done hurting, or healing, or remembering. But we were finally done running, and that was enough.